Lifted KC, we aim to reduce the stigma associated with mental health by promoting awareness of mental illness, its symptoms, and providing resources for those in need. We believe that through trust, relationships, understanding, service, and teamwork, transformation is possible. Support the Men Heal movement by donating to the Cash App handle LiftedKC.org. For more information about our organization, visit www.liftedkc.org. Lifted KC, transforming lives through hope and healing.
What up, podcast world? This your dude, Walt Lee Dundilla, the Popper, Mr. Activelli. Pull up on me, 1809 Vine, 8600 Ward Parkway, or yes, I'm KC.com.
KC is my home. Most scratched in the rest, where your bag at? Posted in the store, moving t-shirts and dad hats. Buy 3, get 1 free, you can have that. Niggas get planted, quintals being lab rats.
Good evening to all of my brothers, all of my sisters, to any and everyone tuning in and trying to navigate this thing called life. Whether you've been following this healing movement from the jump, or you're brand new to the family and tapping in for the first time, welcome, welcome. You are absolutely welcome. This is the Blacked Out Couch Podcast, but we like to think of it as more of a safe space for decompressing instead of your typical pod. And the purpose of this show is to encourage and promote mental health awareness in our communities. For decades, the mere idea of addressing trauma and healing has always been taboo in the Black culture. We're hoping to change that narrative, one day at a time, one conversation at a time. Now keep in mind, although we do believe wholeheartedly that the keys to an intentional healing journey include support groups such as these, as well as a variety of other ways to cope, in no way, shape, or form is this show intended to be a replacement or substitute for professional treatment for your mental health needs. What we want to do is encourage, uplift, and provide our audience with the tools and resources that have helped some of us maneuver in our day-to-day routines. While some of our panelists do have experience and specialize in the mental health industry, we're all everyday people trying to get by, just like you. So always remember, no matter what you may be going through, you are not alone. Again, welcome everyone. It's gonna take plenty of courage to see this thing through, but I got faith in us, ladies and gentlemen. I hope we heal.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the couch tonight for episode 6 with the SISTAS. It is Princess here. We want to show love to the brothers. On the last episode, they talk about breaking generational curses. They got real, they got heavy, and they shared some wisdom. So be sure to tune into that episode if you haven't. But on tonight, we, the sisters, are going to be talking about nurturing with trauma, specifically motherhood. So I don't want to steal too much thunder, and I'm eager to get into this topic. So I'm going to go ahead and bring the ladies on one by one. We got Miss Shonda here.
Hey.
We got Miss Janine here. And we have Miss Devin. Hey, ladies.
Hey, y'all.
Hey, everybody.
How's it going?
It's going.
Yeah, it's been a life. Life has really been life, and that's what I've been telling everybody. Life has really been life. And I appreciate y'all for coming and joining. Oh my goodness. You know what? I need some good energy. I'm sure y'all we ain't gonna tell the audience everything, but I have not been on my game the way I need to. So I need y'all to get me right. So let's kick off.
Amazing. You are doing great, honey.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel at ease with each of you here. So why don't we go ahead and get on to greetings and good things. Greetings and good things. So who wants to kick us off? Actually, you know what, Janine, because you just poured into me, why don't you start? Greetings and good things. What's something good going on in your life and your mental?
Well, hello everyone. That's my greetings. And good things. The baby of the bunch. I have 5 beautiful children, and the baby just graduated from high school, 18 years old. So my children are 18 to 28, and I have successfully raised them. And, that is a good point. I'm in a good space with that, just knowing that, being a good steward of my children and to see all of them graduate and on to, being good stewards and good citizens in the world. I'm just excited. So that's a good thing that's happening with me right now that I would like to share.
Yes.
She empty nesting. Just tell us and rub it all in our face. Rub it in our face. She empty nesting.
Y'all heard about Stella, right? Y'all seen that movie?
Lack of better terms.
You heard me.
And I'm turning 50 this year. Look.
Oh,
yes.
Stella in full effect. Hey.
Come on.
Okay.
Oh, you looking sharp too. Look at that hair.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good. Well, congratulations to you. Congratulations to your child. That's awesome. Do great things. We're going to speak prosperity and life into your legacy. So happy. Appreciate you sharing that good news with us. Good things indeed. Shonda, you said you empty nesting too, so why don't you go next? Good things. Come on.
Yes. My daughter got her apartment a couple weeks ago and has been gone, and I've been peaceful. I love my baby, but she can, sometimes girls, adult women staying in the same house ain't the greatest idea sometimes. So I'm glad I let her stay until she could get her place and, get a stable place for her and my grandson. But that, and I did something like super empowering last weekend. So I've pretty much been floating on cloud 9 all week. So, and I guess I'll share what the empowering thing was that I did. But I did an intimate photo shoot. I don't know if y'all know, but I used to be overweight, like 270 pounds almost, and it's been about 5-6 years that I've been working on myself in that aspect. And around the beginning of the year, I signed up my birthday. I turned 40 this year. So around my birthday, I signed up for a free photo shoot and completely forgot about it because I was working 2 jobs and had a whole bunch of other stuff going on. And they just texted me like last Friday, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. Let me go. And it was more like a artistic type of intimate shoot, but it was amazing, and I can't wait till I get my pictures.
Yeah.
Sound like Shonda been cutting up is what that
We got shown up on this line tonight.
Cut in. So yeah, I done sneak. Shonda dropped a sneak preview for anyone who's a follower. So y'all be sure to follow her. If you don't, y'all told me to follow her. Too cute. I'm like, I want one.
Look.
It was honestly, I walked out of there feeling like $1 million. I'm not gonna lie.
Wow.
Oh, I love that. Good things. Kudos. Yeah.
Abby, your turn.
Yes.
I ain't got nothing. Listen, the funny thing is, as much as we want to not, I guess, sink in our shit, I can honestly say I'm just happy to be here. This week, these last 2 weeks actually have been dreadful. Like, I've been in a funk. I've been dealing with loss, family chaos, just a whole lot of stuff. So just to honestly be able to say I am here in my right mind, I don't take that for granted. So I don't have no fun haha moments. I'm just literally here and grateful that through the way life has been life and I'm still here. So that's my good time. Good time.
Yeah.
That's
I
a
mean, that's
blessing.
really all we
It
got.
is. It is a blessing. It
Yeah.
is a blessing. Well, you know our slogan. I hope you heal, and I really mean that. I'm hoping that you heal. I hope that being on the couch tonight, we can pour into you a little bit, because it's been a week for me too, baby.
The
But
week
you
been
know,
weekend, life been life, and you
exactly.
know.
Things just happening, and we just trying to hold
Mhm.
on. We trying to hold on.
Mhm.
Yes, but you know what? You just transitioned us right on into kind of the first question that I want to pose to you all, which is the concept of trauma. Trauma talk and triggers, y'all. Trauma talk and trauma triggers. So let's have some conversations around that. What is trauma? What does it look like? Let's talk about this trauma.
You
Who
know,
got
I
it?
think as a community, we look at the word trauma as one of those uh, hush hush words, or like it's a stigma around that word. Like nobody wants to be labeled or be classified under that. When simply, if you look at it, trauma is merely just being exposed or voluntarily or involuntarily to a situation that changes your outlook. You know what I'm saying? So, and trauma doesn't always have to be heavy. It doesn't always have to be bad. Trauma is normal. You know, like losing a loved one is traumatic. It doesn't have to say that it makes you a crazy person or any of that. It's just an experience that happens in our lives that, you know, change us for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to piggyback off of that, I agree with that wholeheartedly. Sometimes we don't look at trauma for what it is, but you know, it's really that something that happened in our life that gave us a deep impact. It wasn't like, oh, I lost my keys, I got to find it. Oh, I'm having anxiety. No, it's something that has a long term effect, and when it have a long term effect, it usually affects decisions we make, how we move, you know, all those kind of things. So it can be something you didn't even realize traumatized you, but it affects us as we grow up and different things like that. So trauma just has more of a long term effect, and it kind of influence how we move, how we make decisions, and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. So I looked it up. Y'all know I be trying to Google. Partly because my husband is an author and he be nitpicking at words, baby. But another part of it is because I was just curious, you know, what does the dictionary say about trauma? And both of you are right? It says deeply depressing and disturbing experiences. Deeply, like something that hits your core. Or, you know, we talked a few episodes ago about some of the trauma that Black people have gone through collectively as a people, being so enrooted in us that it's in our genetics, right? I think there's linkages to what we call generational curses. So when I think of trauma, I think of experiences that literally leave an imprint. That's just, you know, in a negative way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
terrible way to experience life and have it like imprinted on your subconscious, to where no matter how much you may consciously try to live in a way that's not expressing those traumas, they come out because they're
Mm-hmm.
subconscious. You have no control over it until you start doing your healing and you're more aware of these things that are manifesting.
I was gonna say
Yes.
those are the worst traumas, the ones that you bury so far down that you don't even subconsciously know when it's impacting you. You start to think that life is normal or this is just who I am, when no, trauma rewritten that DNA in you, and now you're acting out on trauma. I had a client that I was working with, and we were like, the impact from sexual trauma as a child, like she couldn't realize that it was impacting her adult sex life. And I asked her a particular question. She was just like, I don't do that. And I'm like, well, why not? And it kind of rooted back to her childhood trauma. And it's like, it connects. Like you tried so hard to forget that something happened because it hurt so bad, but even in that pain, it's still manifesting in your future. So if you don't deal with it, or if you don't get to a place where you're able to self-reflect and see how something then is affecting you now, then you're going to start operating in that pain, and it's going to become your new norm. And that's not healthy.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
And
Exactly.
it goes
And
back. Oh,
no, go ahead, Shonda.
I was just gonna piggyback off of that and say that it goes back to that what we talked about, the whole money thing and the mindset. Those are things that are subconscious. So you can work your hardest your whole life to try to make advances or try to change, but if those subconscious things are still coming through and you haven't addressed it, it's just going to keep not necessarily just even manifesting in your relationships or stuff like that. Manifesting in what you're actually manifesting into the physical world. So
Yeah. So, like, I guess I wanted to ask you, when you're talking about manifesting, Devin, you're talking about subconsciously living in that norm of trauma. What are triggers then? Can we do both? Can we like operate in a life of trauma and still be triggered? Or if you're so, I guess enrooted in living in that brokenness, is that the trigger?
I think trigger is the adverse reaction to the trauma. Like it's the thing that reminds you, even though you don't want to remember it, it's something that it's almost like an electrical shock. You know what I'm saying? Like my last marriage, like I tried so hard and I was going through all the processes of healing, but subconsciously, whenever a court date was coming, whenever my wedding anniversary was about to come up, anytime anything related to that marriage was coming up, I would just get nauseated. And I kept not like, I was like, what is going on? Until I finally brought it up in my therapy session. It was just like your PTSD, subconsciously, your mind knows that it's reminding you that something is approaching and your body's trying to fight that memory. But until you just deal with it and sit there and let that memory manifest and you process through it and you feel all those emotions, it's going to keep coming back. Like it does no justice. Excuse me, I was getting excited, to ignore it. Like you have to face those triggers head on and you have to deal with it, or else it's going to be a cycle.
Yep.
Yes. And I've had that before. There are times maybe I focus on one thing. My father, he passed away. I just keep going back to that because it's so new. Even though it's been 2 years, it's 29 years of having them and 2 without, but I will drive past certain places and I'm thinking I'm in a good mood, or I done had a good day. Maybe I got some ice cream in the car and I drive past something and it's like memory just flashed. Or I just hear him say something that I know he would have said if we rode past that. He was very uncomfortable with the sound of sirens because he had health issues. And so whenever he would hear, ambulance sirens, he would always say, wait, are they coming for me? Y'all didn't call 911. Like he would get triggered by that. And so now whenever I hear sirens for ambulances, there's a part of me that's like, oh, I miss my dad. But then there's another part of me where I have to try and balance that out, where I have to like almost talk to my trigger and say, but at least he doesn't have that fear from that anymore. And so that's something that I do to kind of help massage and recognize and like face that trigger head on. But what do y'all do? Have anybody ever been triggered? I guess what was maybe one of your first experiences with trauma and being triggered? How do you deal?
I'll give you an example, and it's not my first experience, but sometimes triggers, it might not be the same comparison of what happened, but if
Mhm.
you feel the same emotion
Mhm.
from whatever happens, it can trigger you. I'm gonna give you an example because I'm a single mom. I raised my children by myself, all five of them, and so I didn't realize that I have a deep embedded um, feeling or trigger of being abandoned. So it can be a plain situation. I'm gonna give an example. If I'm supposed to, meet with my agents and we're supposed to, have a training or we're gonna come together and do some ideas and everybody knows how important hitting this goal and all that stuff is for me or for the team. And let's just say something happened and they didn't show up. And if no communication happens to say that they're not showing up, oh, I feel some kind of way. And I'm like, why do I respond that way? Well, I respond that way because it's a different situation, but I feel abandoned. I feel we could have communicated, that you could have told, so the lack of communication and not showing up triggers that abandonment feeling. And it might not even be that serious to them. But for me, I'm like, what the, but it's the same feeling. So I'm connecting that because that triggers me to feel abandoned.
Mhm.
And then
Completely
just think
thing.
about
It's,
how our projections alter relationships,
Mhm.
work, business, personal,
Mhm.
intimate. Like, they don't know that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just thinking about that and it just, convicting. Like, dang, how many times do we unknowingly project our triggers onto a
Yes.
situation or a relationship, or because our expectation or because of
yep.
our fears, and now we've severed a relationship that had no idea from jump that we're responding from something that took place before they even became a part of our lives. So
Mhm.
Absolutely.
that's why, whew, healing is essential.
Yeah.
Like,
And it probably
and
wasn't even that serious to them. They don't know what's going on, but that little thing triggered you and you done reacted and they're like, what is wrong with you? And it messes up relationships and stuff. I agree completely.
Or
Yeah.
it keep you from having relationships altogether.
Yes,
You trust nobody.
That person.
that's right.
Right. Oh,
That's
and it
right.
triggers
I'm
you.
that person who
That's right.
who who gonna be loyal to myself over anybody else. So, if somebody trigger me and I feel like I've already made my point, my case about why this triggers me and expose my trauma, because I'm not the type of person that is afraid to talk about what happened to me. I never have been, and I think that's one of the reasons why I've been able to get through so many of the traumas that I've been through with, I won't say no problem, because of course that subconscious stuff is still there, but on a conscious level, being able to walk and still, still walk in my light, still be happy, still love people in general. But the trigger for me was letting people get close to me. I could be generalized love to everybody and everything, but I would not let nobody get close to me. And even that whole abandonment thing, it was a real struggle with me and my daughter, not to mention that I was adopted. Then my parents basically wouldn't give me my kid back. And then so when she came back to live with me and when she was 13, I was so overprotective to the point that it made her uncomfortable, and that's out of fear of her being taken away from me. You know what I mean? And so that whole situation with my daughter is one of the things that kind of catapulted me into just working on myself in general. But
Yeah.
I got rid of people. I ain't gonna lie to you. Bye, blocked. Don't call me. Don't talk to me. I still love you, but I'm gonna love you from a distance.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we say it as though it's right. You know what I'm saying? Like, one of the things that I used to always say, and it just started convicting me. I would pridefully say, I don't care if I get married 10 times, I'm going to find love. And then it's like, as I walk in my spiritual realm, it's just like, but I understand what marriage is and what it's supposed to represent. So, how can I say that I understand and I honor God's covenant, but in the reverse, say, I get married 10 times? Like, and I was proudly saying it. Now, I do stand for saying, I love love, and I'm not going to stop yearning or seeking it, but I am going to be intentional moving forward to make sure that in order for me to honor God's covenant, I make sure that who I'm loving and who loves me back is who God sent for me. So, no, I don't want to be married 10 times. Like, I didn't want to be married twice. Each marriage I thought was going to be my this marriage, and I ain't getting married no more. But life has happened, and my understanding of marriage, commitment, my understanding of me and my trauma and my triggers have all kind of manifested in a way that it's important that we are mindful that we're not speaking our traumas into existence, that we're not boasting and bragging on the things that hurt us, and really just continuing to make that our norm. Like, absolutely, sis, protect your peace at all costs, because that is going to be the thing that keeps you moving on this earth. But to say that I'm just going to block you and keep it moving, that's unhealthy, because are you resolving issues? Or, and I'm not just picking on you, I'm just
Yeah, I
using
don't
your
do
words
that
for
from
other
the
people.
gate. Yeah,
But I'm
I
just
don't
like,
do that from
we
the
got
gate.
people
I
that be
give
like,
people too
block,
many
you done.
chances.
Yeah, but it's
That's
like,
not me. I give people way too many chances, and that's when you
boundaries
get
for
played.
sure.
That's
Boundaries for
yeah,
sure.
exactly,
And protecting
exactly.
your
I'm
peace is
big on
essential. But
boundaries.
I'm just making sure,
Yeah,
we're not moving in this comfort of dysfunction, right?
yeah, no,
Like,
no, no. I totally get that. My thing is the people that I've literally had to cut off. I've given so many chances, so many chances.
but
I've
then is
cut
that a
off.
trigger? Is
I've come
that a
back.
trigger?
What's that?
Is that a trigger, allowing people to constantly be in a position? Because at the same token, protecting my peace is, okay, you're showing me who you are, so I'm gonna love you, but I'm gonna go ahead and create this boundary. I'm not gonna give you 7 times to hurt me, because why are we
Yeah,
putting
well,
ourselves through unnecessary trauma? Why are we
that
putting ourselves through unnecessary pain
that was
seven
my
times?
trauma.
They show you it's a
That was
duck,
my
it's a duck.
trauma.
Yeah,
That was
yeah,
my trauma. People pleasing was part of my trauma.
yeah.
And I
Scared
mean,
to
one
lose relationships and have
that
people
part,
taken away. Yep.
and I again, like I said, I'm adopted. I was away from my mom as early as a year old. You know what I'm saying? And so, from what my psychiatrist, my psychologist both had told me is basically like on a level of building relationships and close intimate relationships, I kind of really didn't have a chance, because the security that I'm supposed to have at the most vulnerable time of my life was not there. You know, I don't have no qualms with my mom. Me and my biological mom have a great relationship, and I know why she did what she did. But just from the neurological mental health standpoint of it, that's how it affected me.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then not to mention, I mean, I'm already neurodivergent. And so trauma on top of a neurodivergent person is more detrimental to a person who has a brain that's functioning like everybody else's. So it's compounded, that's why they diagnosed me with CPTSD, because it's compounded, because it's trauma from over and over and over and over and over and over again. And sometimes not even letting me catch a breath. So I get where all of those I get where the people pleasing came from, and I get where not creating boundaries came from, and I get where being too closed off came from. So it's a growth process.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I do want to ask you a question. You laid a lot on us. All of y'all have been laying a lot on us, but I just like to say to you, commendations for carrying through life. I have questions for you that I'm gonna have to take offline, but something online. What is neurodivergent? I'm not familiar.
People who are autistic, ADHD, people who have learning disabilities that don't necessarily affect their ability to function like intellectually or in certain other capacities, but and then it's not like a mental health disorder. It's something that you just have, you know.
Yeah.
So whereas like ADHD was considered a mental health disorder for a long time until they figured out that people's brains just operate like this, you know. And so that's what neurodivergent means. Same thing with like autism or anybody like on the autism spectrum.
I see. So it's like neurologically, your brain functions differently than the masses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it means. And so part of ADHD is being hypersensitive and sensitive to rejection. So when you already naturally like this, and then you constantly going through, you know, different type of abuses with people, man, I honestly, I'm just be thankful sometimes because for me to still have the attitude that I have, and I know people who have gone through far less than I have, and they are broken down, and I just have to be grateful because
That's your defense mechanism.
telling you,
Mm-hmm.
Keep
I
pushing,
agree.
sis.
Yes, keep doing it. And on top of all that, you're a mother. And that's exactly getting into the theme of tonight. You're expected to nurture, you're expected to take care of, you're expected to pour into, and you have all of this trauma, all of these experiences that were done to you. It's not like you raised your hand and said, "Hey, I want to go try that horrible thing. I want to see if I'm strong enough." So what is this concept of nurturing with trauma to y'all? For me, it's like I just said, expecting to build when broken, if I had to put it in a phrase.
Mhm.
What is nurturing with trauma to
But
y'all?
isn't that our life? Isn't that our calling? I mean, seriously, like, what else can we do? You have the option. I mean, God called us to multiply. So we're going to make babies for those that can, and even those that can't still have, I feel like, an automatic nurturing spirit. Like, you don't have to be a mother to be a nurturer. Like, I have friends that are not mothers, but their spirit is so nurturing, it's so caring. It's just a genuine love that is given, it outpours like some better than some mothers that are actually mothers, if we can be honest. But it's such a battle because we're mothering and we're nurturing and we're loving from experience.
mm-hmm.
And that experience is then projected into that relationship, and it shows up in how we love, in how we nurture, in how we chastise, in how we comfort, in how we discipline, all that. And for the most part, I know, just speaking for myself, I struggle. I'm always tug of warring in my mind, like, am I doing this for my trauma, or am I doing this because this is what a mama's supposed to do? Like, it's always that, because there's no handbook to parenting. You just,
Mm-hmm.
you kind of take what was given to you. You look at it like, this didn't make me feel good, so then either you're gonna overcompensate for what you didn't have, or you're
Yeah.
just not gonna be equipped to give it. So it's always a tug of war on, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? Is this coming from a loving place, or is this my defense mechanism from my trauma showing up?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think I'm mute. I'll like to speak on that. Devin always lead the way for me to say something. Thank you, Devin. So that is a perfect question, and that was something that I battled with. So I'm the only girl. I have four brothers, and I was born in the 70s, and we spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house. My grandmother, I want to say half raised us. Well, my grandmother had this thing that she instilled in me, which it really took me going to spiritual counseling that took me all the way back to my trauma, what traumatized me, which I didn't even realize I was traumatized. I just knew I behaved certain ways. Sometimes I'll get shy. I wouldn't be as bold as I knew I could be. I'm like, why do sometimes I have all this insecurity, even at the level that I've become in business and education and stuff. It was moments I always felt this small a lot of times. And so to find out, which I remember all this when I was 5 years old. It took my trauma begin when I was 5 years old. I'm the only girl out of five, so I have four brothers. And so my grandmother, her philosophy in raising or help raising us was that boys were better than girls. Girls were worthless. I couldn't play. I couldn't laugh. Anytime I did any of those things, I physically was whooped with a switch. So it was kind of terrible because I remember that physical abuse from her from just trying to be a kid. And she had a store, and I would work like in the store, 5 years old, all the way up till I remember. That's all I remember from my childhood is working and physical abuse and the verbal abuse from her. Mm-hmm. And so as I grew, I despised my grandmother, and I couldn't understand. And then when the tables turned and she got sick, and I had to start taking care of her when she had Alzheimer's, I hate to use this word, but I was like, I hate her. I don't really care if she falls or whatever, but my spirit, that was conflicting with my spirit, and I knew it was wrong. And I prayed to God, and I asked, I said, why do I feel like this about my grandmother? This is my grandmother. Regardless of what she did to me, I should not feel like that about her. And the Holy Spirit revealed to me that was all she knew. So she gave me what someone had given her. And so I have children the same way, 4 boys, 1 girl. And I realized, why do my daughter irk me? And my daughter bold. She bold. She thinks like me. She can answer problems. She can solve them. And so I took that when she was showing me that as a little bitty kid. I'm talking about reflecting leadership skills out of this world. Well, I didn't recognize that as that. I recognized that as, oh, she's being disrespectful. She's challenging me. And the truth is, she was not. But from what was given to me and inflicted on me, I started to do the exact same thing to my daughter. And one day I woke up in my mind, and I'm like, she was about 4 years old. I'm talking about sharp, y'all. This little child is sharp. And I said, Janine, I didn't say it. The Holy Spirit said it to me. You better be careful of what you're doing, because what you didn't like that happened to you, you're doing that to your daughter. Mm-hmm. You are not saying it, but you're making her feel that the boys are better, because I didn't have those issues with the boys. Well, I didn't view it the same way, So I was reflecting or displaying that, oh, the boys are the little angels, but you, little girl, your mouth, that's what I was doing. And I'm so glad the Holy Spirit revealed that to me when she was younger, because I was able to take my traumas that happened to me. I was giving it to her, but I was able to see it so I could stop doing that. And to this day, the child is still bold. The child is still courageous. She's a leader. And that probably was who I was, but my grandmother took it from me. Does that make sense? Because we come here with a spirit of being bold. We come here with all of that. And usually things happen to us where somebody close to us, whether it's a school teacher, where it's somebody takes that from us. And my grandmother took it from me. I had to go back and learn how to be that, and still is learning and healing from it. But I almost took that from my daughter. Wow. Ain't that crazy?
That's crazy.
I'm gonna piggyback off Miss Janine, because that whole thing about, going back, I didn't want to repeat the same things with my daughter that my parents had done with me. And it goes back to that being way too lenient, because you don't want them. My parents were so strict that, there were some insane rules that I had that a lot of people didn't think made sense, and neither did I, but I wasn't nothing I could do about it. So certain things that my parents did when they raised me, and as far as like, like Miss Janine said, I couldn't speak up. I wasn't allowed to speak up for myself or nothing like that. So that was one thing I always instilled in my daughter. Don't be afraid to speak up to me. Don't be afraid to challenge me. Like, I don't want you challenging me in a disrespectful manner, but don't be afraid to speak up. And, then there was certain things like, I do not believe in whooping kids. I never have. I got my butt tore up for unnecessary stuff all the time. I don't see how violence solves anything. So I've never, ever agreed with whooping kids. People can do what they want with their kids. But, I got talked about, oh, she too nice. She want to be her friend. To this day, me and my daughter have a wonderful relationship.
Awesome.
We have our stats, but
that's healthy though. That's healthy. Actually, I forgot who I was talking to. It might have been my counselor. And she was saying that if you around somebody, especially that you say you love, and you never have conflict, you need to question if it's the real thing.
Mm-hmm.
You need to question if it. Now, that's not to say that you should be, creating trauma. Not talking about that, but just disagreements, different perspectives,
Right.
So that's normal, that's healthy, and that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that for both of you. Okay, we're going to take a commercial break real quick, but I'm going to give y'all something to think about. Next up, we're going to talk about principles of motherhood. So you talked about how things have shown up, right? The trauma has shown up, but how has that maybe shaped what you consider is foundational to be an effective mother? Okay, so that's what we're going to get on after this commercial break. Angela Marie Publishing presents, in association with the Blacked Out Couch podcast, The Healing Collection, featuring apparel with 10 unique designs to represent your healing journey in style. Also, check out The Survivor, our custom tote bag tailored for carrying those day-to-day loads. A portion of all proceeds are donated to mental health organizations dedicated to the culture and the community. Visit our store by clicking the link in the description or going to www.angelamariepublishing.com to shop now and support the movement. Let's heal.
What's good? This is Jazz from 64111 Studio. Make sure you holler at me for all your mixing, mastering, and recording needs. For booking, please visit www.64111studio.com.
Okay, we're back from our commercial break. Now we want to hear what the sisters have to say about principles of motherhood. Come on, let's bring the ladies back on. What y'all saying? What y'all saying? Where did you form your principles of motherhood, and how do you feel like your trauma has impacted that for you?
Well, I'll go first on that. Actually, I thing about being a mother is we don't get any instructions with it. It just happened, okay? And I became a mother at 22. And so can you imagine, you're still young. I was in college and I'm like, oh gosh, I got somebody I got to take care of. But the natural mother instinct kicked in. And one thing that was important to me, because at that time when I had that child, it was an abusive relationship. And it was funny how I endured that abuse for some months. It wasn't a long time, but it was long enough. Okay. It was long enough. I realized that I have to make a decision, because what I'm accepting, do I want my child to accept it? And that kind of goes back to sometimes when we have trauma, we have to be careful on how we react to it, because sometimes trauma can cause us to do the exact same thing, like I was saying with me giving my daughter what my grandmother gave me. But in this case, I decided to take the trauma and do the opposite, do something positive, because I didn't want that same trauma, inflicted on my child. So I was able to make a decision on that one correctly, because I knew that that would influence how my child was going to grow up to be. And so I took that trauma, I escaped that situation, and I made a vow to be the best parent that I can be. So I went into protective mode. It kicked in I don't know how much protective I would have been, but I knew I had to protect. And so it's all about how we take that trauma. And my guidelines come from, what the Bible says. We have to be good steward over our children. They are a gift, no matter the circumstance of how they came. And how do you grow that child to be a good citizen? How do you grow that child to have spiritual enlightenment? How do you grow that child to be a good person? And so I always seek that. How do I get through what I'm going through, or no matter emotionally what I'm feeling, how do I contribute to this child well-being? Because everybody comes here with a purpose, and my goal and us as parents is to mold that child to be or fulfill that purpose. And so we have to do that. It's hard because, once again, we don't want to inflict what we feel, or inflict, some of the negative thoughts if we took trauma the wrong way, or our perspective. So we got to have a guideline, and mine's always been from a spiritual perspective, even though in the flesh it can be challenging. How do I continue to be in the spirit when I'm raising my child?
I guess I'll go ahead and piggyback off of Miss Janine. I think I got my principles of motherhood from my mother and grandmother. My mother, I can't sit here and complain. I think she did a great job as far as raising me to be a good citizen, raising me in church to where I did have a spiritual background and faith. So even through some of the rougher times in my childhood, I was still able to be faithful. And I think that's what got me through a lot of those challenges growing up. But there were a lot of things that happened when I was a child that I didn't agree with, just from my own perspective of knowing how it made me feel as a child. And like Miss Janine, I also tried to do things differently. And in my case, the way the trauma kind of showed up in my relationship with my daughter is the same as Miss Janine, is being protective, but for me it was overprotective. It was overprotective to the point of anxiety. It was overprotective to the point that I never wanted any more kids, because as much as I love children, I never wanted to have to live with that anxiety of possibly not having my child in my life. And so that definitely had an effect on if I had any more kids after I had my daughter. And it definitely had an effect on how I communicated with her. So some of my triggers or some of my trauma still showed up in my relationship with my daughter, despite me trying to avoid that. And part of it was some emotionally avoidant type of behaviors that I had with my daughter.
You said emotionally avoiding? What do you mean by that?
I am very empathetic. And my daughter's very emotional. And so I'm empathetic to the point of actually feeling other people's emotions in my body. And sometimes it could be a bit overwhelming for me, for her to get so emotional. And so it wasn't so much as I was just trying to avoid her emotions. It was just, sometimes it was just a bit overwhelming for me to even try to process. And this is kind of before I even realized that's what I was experiencing, that level of empathy of I always knew I was empathetic. I knew that since I was a kid, but I didn't realize I was experiencing it to the extent that it was making me want to avoid interactions with people.
I deal with that too, LaShonda. It's tough, but I found out here recently that because I used to pray to God and say, why did you make me like this? Why am I like this?
It's a gift.
But that's the spirit of God. God is empathetic. He's empathetic, and from a fleshly perspective, it doesn't feel good. But from a spiritual perspective, because God wants us to be like Him, we are made in His image. We have an heightened sense of that, and that's why we can feel that, because that's how God is. We just
I get it now. Like I recently just accepted, like within the past year, just have accepted that it is a gift to have that, and I'm learning how to separate and be more aware of what's mine and what's somebody else's. So,
because it'll drain you, and you have to replenish from that. You have to replenish from that, because it'll drain. I could walk in a room and tell when somebody got something going on. I'll be like, oh God, somebody in here is on one today. Now I got to seek out who that is and have a conversation with them, because I feel it. I know what it feels like.
You know what made me realize that about myself is that I would be happy as I don't know what, just happy as I don't know what. And then I go in somewhere like Walmart, and now all of a sudden I got a funky attitude, and I have no idea where it came from. And that's really what made me realize that that's what was happening.
Yeah. Them spirits and
My
energy
social
be
anxiety.
projecting.
Yes. Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm the same way. So a question, I guess, for all of y'all, and I'm gonna actually throw this one to Devin because I haven't heard from you this round yet. Do you think that it's normal or acceptable to talk about emotions with your children? Maybe how you're feeling, how they're feeling, because that's not something we did a ton in my household. My mom actually had to teach me to journal, to share those things with her, because it wasn't, I guess, expected for us to talk about feelings in our home. Is that something you think we should have?
So I'm gonna say, first off, I was raised by some phenomenal women. My grandmother, my aunts, and my dad had one sister that I believe gave me all the love that she could. In saying that, I don't think that I was emotionally sound. I would consider myself the black sheep of my family. I was always outgoing, loud, energetic. And even in my immediate household with my mother and my sister, they were more laid back, introverted type people. So I never felt like I fit in. It's crazy that you asked that, because as I was listening to the other sisters talk just about how childhood trauma projects into our parenting, it made me realize a situation where I was molested when I was a child. And it made me lose my sense of protection. When it finally came out to my parents what happened, the consequences wasn't about me, right? Like, it wasn't how do you feel? How did this make you feel? That was wrong. This is what we need to do to make it right. Like, those steps did not happen. And I don't shun them for it. I've grown to understand that they handled it to the best of their abilities with the resources that they had based on how they were raised. And in that era, a lot of our parents and their parents were raised with that. What happens in our house stays in our house. Like, they don't call the police. They don't tell people. They deal with it, especially when it's close. They deal with it in-house, and then it's over. Like, I'm a harm you for harming my baby, and then it's over. And it's just like, emotionally, that left a void for me. And we often ask God why he has us go through things. And I was so angry with God for a long time, even in my adult years, because that one situation altered a lot with me. It altered how I viewed relationships. It altered how I responded as a woman when I'm supposed to be soft and submissive. It showed how I always had this hard, I'm gonna protect myself, I can't depend on nobody kind of attitude. And I kind of made people not really want to be around me. And God spoke to me when it happened to my daughter. She was 8 years old, and the crazy thing is she was way stronger than me. Like it took me years to tell somebody what was going on. Like I literally allowed myself to go through that trauma for years. My daughter told the next day. Like I mean, and one of the things that I had to be intentional about, one, because when it happened, it instantly made me go back to when it happened to me. And now I'm reliving this, I'm thinking about, and I'm processing all this stuff. Like, I want to go F this man up. But if I do that, then how's that going to make my daughter feel? So I had to talk with her. Like, we were all in the house. Her brothers was there. I took her for a ride by herself. And we pulled over at a park. And I asked her all the hard questions that no mother ever wants to hear, like, how did it make her body feel? How did it make her heart feel? Do she think it was right? Do she think it was her fault? Like, having that conversation was the hardest conversation I pray I ever have to have with my daughter. But watching her strength in communicating and expressing herself only validated that I had already created that safe space for her. Because I talked to my daughter. I asked her how her day is. Like, talking about emotions is norm in our house. You mad? What you mad at? Why are you crying? Like, why are you supposed to cry? Even with my son, like, we tease him about being a crybaby, but at the same time, I conversate with him like, why are you crying? What is a good reason to cry? Are you crying because you're not getting your way? Or are you crying because you're really hurt? Because if you're just not getting your way, that's not a reason to cry. I never encourage him that boys don't cry. I validate how he feels and make sure he understands what's appropriate and what's not. Same for with my daughter. When we were talking about that situation, I just admired her strength, like literally having to talk to so many agencies about what happened. Child Protective Services, the police, the courts, detectives, like it became a circus. And I kept feeling my own experiences trying to resurface. And I had to keep deading it. Like, this ain't about you, Devin. This is her situation, her story, her outcome. And I wanted to not get people involved because I realized that when I got people involved, it became World War III in my family. And I didn't want that. I didn't want her to feel like she was the source of drama, right? But I also wanted her to understand that there are things that are supposed to happen in life and not supposed to happen. And what happened to her was not supposed to happen. And this was during the peak of police brutality and everybody, Black people hate cops. And I was very intentional to explain to her. And I said to her clearly, we're going to give the police one chance to do their job with you. We're going to go to them. We're going to tell them what happened. I'm going to be there with you. You don't have to be scared. If you want me in the room, I will. If you don't, I won't. But we're going to give them a chance to do the right thing. And I went to the police. They handled the case. I understand why most people don't go to the police because it was overwhelming, and that's a whole nother topic. But I wanted her to see that there are people in this world that will protect you. There are people in this world that will make sure that you're safe. And there's people in this world that love you. And your mother is one of them. So just going through that process with her, I didn't realize it then, but it healed me from my trauma walking through that journey with her. And it was an eye opener. And I remember I just woke up one morning crying because it hit me like, I've been mad at God this whole time because I had to go through it. But now I see that what I went through was so that I could be what I was to my daughter. Not that I wish it upon her, not that I'm happy it happened to her, but these are the things, like, we're in a world that has good and bad. And there's a chance that bad is going to happen to you. It's how we handle it going forward. And just being able to have that moment with her and not project my trauma on her, but allowing her to express how she felt. It's crazy because this was like 2 years ago and the guy just got sentenced to 8 years last month. And I sat her down and talked about it. And I said, this is what the outcome was. How does that make you feel? It's crazy because I was going to do a workshop and she was just like, Mama, that sounds like a workshop about what I went through. Can I talk? And she's 11 now. So I kind of looked over at her, still being the mother, like wanting to protect her. But I have to understand that I created that space for her to feel safe about communicating her emotions. And Lord, I'm not going to get in the way if that little girl's story is supposed to impact somebody else, because how many young girls do you see able to articulate that kind of pain, that kind of trauma? Like, yeah, I could tell about my trauma at 37 when it happened to me 30 years ago, but to have someone a few years outside of that trauma and be able to, I said, I'm gonna let God use you, child. I'm not gonna impose, interject. So to answer your question with that long story, I think it is definitely essential that we give our children the space to be able to not just talk about their emotions, but be able to identify them. Like, my son will come home, how was your day? It was all right. I need you to articulate what is all right. What happened? How was practice? Was you hot? Was you tired? Like, give me some real verbs here. Like, I need you to express, adjectives. Like, give me some descriptive words, and not just be okay with giving those blanket statements of, oh, I'm okay, because we as a community, we use those and we gravitate to those, and we say we're okay when we're really hurting, and then we get mad when people don't check on us. Tell us how you feel so that if I can be there, I can help you, or I can direct you to who can. So I'm gonna wrap it up, but hope I answered the question.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You said an earful. You said a soulful. You said a mindful. First of all, I want to say thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure it's a challenge. I'm sure you have to, take deep breaths every single time you share that. It's a layer of strength that you have to exhibit. So thank you. I also want to make sure I give kudos to your daughter. I am very impressed by you. What's her name, Devin? I need to call her by name, if you don't mind sharing. Alani, when you are listening to this years down the line, I just want to give you a round of applause and give you flowers for that strength. There are a lot of women who unfortunately have fallen victim to what you have been through, and for you to just stay strong, round of applause to you, and we hope to see you in the skies on the platforms one day. Yes, seriously. And I'm glad that justice was served in this instance. So you broke generational curses.
Yes.
You broke generational curses. And to you as well, Devin, for talking about it, that's breaking generational curses, right? For going to the police and taking action, that's breaking generational curses that exist. For encouraging your sons to talk about in detail what they are feeling, acknowledging, recognizing, expressing, that is breaking generational curses. So round of applause to you, girl, because that's exactly what we need to be doing. That's why we have Blacked Out Couch, Unpacking, Lifted KC, these mental health resources, because we have to release. We have to talk, we have to open, and that's the first part. And so for allowing your daughter and teaching to do that, and your sons, and starting to embed and engrave that in them now, man, thank you. That's planting seeds. That's planting real seeds.
Yes. Most definitely.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you all, it's like, Devin, you knew I was going to ask, huh? I was going to ask, how do we feel like trauma relates to generational curses, and can generational curses be broken? But you just went ahead and took us on home with everything you shared. Everything you shared. Because when I was younger, I'll share this quick story. I hope I make it quick. But when I was younger, I shared a notebook with one of my friends in middle school. I don't know if any millennials is in the room, or if anybody in the room that dealt with the whole notebook thing, but we stopped writing notes where you tore it out and gave them to people. We would literally, every other class, okay, I wrote, now you got to write back to me. It was like letters. And one of my friends told me that she was having a relationship with a police that worked at our school, a police officer, a whole grown man. Mind you, again, we are in middle school at this point. So, 11, 12, somewhere in there. And she had admitted that to me in the notebook. And in that notebook, I had shared with her prior to her sharing with me, I had shared with her how my dad and I were, we have friction. I was just saying how he gets on my nerves. He's so strict, woe is me, woe is me. Y'all know how it is when middle schoolers and high schoolers bump heads with their parents. And my teacher read that as code as if I was saying that my father was sexually abusing me. And he did not. He did not. But the police came to my mom's house. They took this notebook and made a whole thing of it. And when I tell y'all that my mom stood by my dad and she asked me if he had ever mistreated me in a way that would have been suggestive to the experience he was going through. He was in court. It was a whole process. And nothing happened. God really covered my family, but it just impressed me to see how much my mom loved my dad and how she trusted us and how she trusted, me, really. She trusted me at the end of the day, because some mamas, their daughters try to tell them and they refuse to see it. But she listened to me and our family held tight. There was definitely some repercussions with my friend. I don't know if they ever got to the bottom of who was having that relation with her, but it was a whole experience. And just the experience by itself was traumatizing to me. We never talk about it in my family. And, maybe a couple of days before my dad passed, he and I talked about it. But as a household, we've never talked about it. And I think that's something that I'm seeking to do, to just, talk to my mom and have that release. So again, I'm just super impressed with Devin and how she is embedding that into her kids right now, because it's critical. It's so critical.
It's
so critical. So what else? What other signs should we exhibit if we want to break generational curses? What else y'all got for me?
I think that what me and Miss Janine was talking about earlier with the empathy and the compassion. And I think we need to treat our children like they are individuals and not just like they're just our kids. I've seen over my life parents treat their children as if they're just supposed to be subservient. They're not supposed to have and their own mind. They're not supposed to question anything, and I think that's inappropriate, because it teaches us to continue to grow up and not question anything and always believe that just because somebody is an authority figure that they're correct, even though our own senses and our own intuition and our own mind is telling us something different. And that's how we end up conditioning our kids to get stuck on a hamster wheel too.
I'll agree with you on that big time, and also with parenting the children based upon their particular personalities, because all 5 of my kids have all different personalities. And can you imagine, being a parent, and sometimes it just kind of reminds me like I used to be a school teacher. You can't teach kids just like this in the classroom. You got some high, some low, some average. You got to meet the kids where they are. Whereas parents, when you parenting multiple children, you have to be able to meet those children where they are. Some you might have to be more direct. Some you gotta, look at where they are emotionally. And that was one of the biggest things that I learned from being a parent, that all the children have different personalities, they have different experiences. And I'm gonna give you an example. Out of my 4 children, like I was saying, they're by 4 different fathers. I kind of explained to the ladies on break. We talked about that a little bit. And so one thing that I did as a parent, because that is traumatizing. I had children between the ages of 22 and 32, pretty young. Okay, thank goodness for my mom, because my mom was that nurturing person, and I knew I could give them that, but I could not give them, what a father should give them. And I never acted like I was their father, and I never spoke that, nor did I ever speak anything negative to them about their father. So my second oldest son, which each one of these children, I had a traumatic Each one of these relationships, y'all, was a traumatic relationship because these were relationships, strong relationships I was in. And you coming out of a strong relationship, pregnant for most of them, exit long relationships, and then pregnant, and then boom, and you got to exit with a child and another child. Now you got another child, and it was the most traumatic experience I ever had. So I had to take my trauma and reverse it. Now my second oldest son, I got pregnant with him in grad school, and me and his dad, that was like one of the best relationships I had had. To make a long story short, he was happy we was having a baby until he talked to his mom, and then his mom changed his mind about it, and he wanted me to have an abortion. Okay, if a person chooses to have an abortion, that's on them. I disagree. Okay, I'm in a situation, deal with it. And so I dealt with it, but he told me that if I did not have that abortion, don't say a word to him. And we lived in the same house, even though it was a co-ed house. We lived in the same house. Y'all was so bad that he would bring other girls to the house just because I said no. And he meant what he said. He wasn't going to talk to me, and he didn't. So I had the child. I was down in Mississippi, moved away from Mississippi. The moral of the stories that I'm getting to is that my second oldest son has never seen his dad to this day, and he is 24 years old. Now, how did I parent him? Never said anything to him about the situation with his father. I took responsibility. I said, you know what? When I moved from Mississippi, son, I changed cell phones. We got disconnected, and I have yet to be able to catch up with his father. That was my story the whole time. He still doesn't know to this day that his father didn't want him. But that was my story. And it was kind of hard for him, I'm assuming, because sometimes, the kids that talk about their father, he didn't have that to talk about. This child was so gifted. I poured into him. I poured into all of them. But at the age of 15, his test scores were so high that he was recruited by Cerner at the age of 16 to go to school and learn to be a system engineer. He started working for Cerner at the age of 16. He is a system engineer. He had his bachelor's at the age of 19, graduated with the associates done when he left high school. He had all of that done. And he's 7 years coming to some sabbatical or something that Cerner is gifting him because he's been a system engineer. He bought me my first house in 2019. He was only 19 years old, not through sports, through his intellect. This is the child who father didn't want him. I didn't have to tell him that story. I didn't have to fill him with that negativity. I didn't have to and grown that I got to raise my kids out by myself. No, I execute the spirit within me because I can do all things through Christ who strengthened me. And I raised my children from that perspective. Never gave any one of them a negative story on what happened with me and their dad. And to this day, he's just 24 years old. He makes almost six figures and he is successful. His mind is straight. And I never burden him to worry about grown folk stuff. So when I say we as parents have to still parent from trauma, it's not about, what's happening to me. I don't want, because if his father had been there, I would have gladly wanted him to connect with his father and meet his father. His first time talking to his father was when he graduated from college. So he's talked to him a time or two, but he's never seen him. And so just reinforcing positivity into them. We got this together. We ain't got to talk about their dad. I don't have to say, don't talk to your daddy now. I'm glad he's talking to his dad now because that is his father. And so we have to not take grown people's situation and give it to the child. Wonder if I burdened him with that story when he was a kid on that his daddy didn't want. What kind of child could he had possibly turned out to be? And my children, none of their fathers existed, but they in their lives. But my children had a live band. They performed for like 4 national recording artists. They self-taught themselves to be musicians. A lot of positive things came from my trauma because I did not want to enforce that on them because I always looked at, does it matter right now what I'm dealing with as an adult with that, or do I focus on the ultimate goal? What do I want my children to look like at this age? What kind of person do I want them to be? How do I want them to give back to the world? And that's all I focused on. Was it hard? Yes. Did we struggle? Yes. But also that gave me the energy to kick in and say, you need to be a business owner because you got to take care of these children financially and you want them to have the best life. So it pulled some strength out of me that I probably wouldn't have executed. So, we have to take that trauma and we have to deal with it, not give it to the kids, okay? Because they're gonna run into their own trauma. They live lives, and we have to do the best we can do, the best way we can, and we have to always stay positive and operate as much as we can from the spirit.
Yes.
That reminds me of how people say you can't be your kid's friend. Like, I really despise that statement because if we look at the true meaning of friendship, if you're someone's friend, you should be holding them accountable.
Absolutely.
They should be able to trust you. They should be able to communicate with you. So I love the fact that my kids, they may not call me their friend, but I call them my friend because based on our relationship, they've shown me and proven that I've created a space where they can trust me with delicate information. And I'm not out here allowing my kids to live reckless lives. That's not a friend. That's not holding them accountable. That's allowing them to just go willy-nilly. I'm a friend because I give my kids the space to be authentically them. I protect them. I nurture them. And, like I said, a friend is someone that holds you accountable, that you can love, that you can trust. And I don't think there's anything wrong. I think everyone should strive to be their kid's friend because with that comes the principles of motherhood. It comes with, just the task of life and accountability.
Absolutely.
That's
agree
right.
with you.
I agree too.
The kids that share things with their friends before they share with a parent.
Yes.
So
And my daughter is the opposite. My daughter come tell me stuff. I be like, child.
Like I
my daughter.
But I sit there and listen. Now when it go back to that being too over dramatic stuff, I might have to ask her to dial it back a notch, and I ain't really all in the gossip and stuff. So I told her to warn me when she about to do that. But she's very, very comfortable with and wait.
That's right. That's right. Now, I always feel like if we can be friends with Jesus and God, we can be friends with anybody. Now, who are you to be so above me that you can't be friends with me, but God can? Now, make no sense. Absolutely. And then to what? I'm sorry, I just feel like the Holy Spirit just came up over me because when you were talking, Janine, it reminded me of Proverbs. I think it's Proverbs. Is it 18 and 21? Proverbs 18 and 21. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Y'all, like that's scripture.
That's scripture. It's everything.
And so yes. So what we say, words are not just words. They are our way of communicating. My husband would say this all the time, being an author, how powerful words are. So he's gonna like quote me and double quote me tonight. But words have power, right? Exactly. That's how I get information from me to you. That's spiritual. Right? Like there's power in that. The way that we learn, the way that we're communicating right now is words, and that's spiritual. There's real power there. So I just thank y'all. I know y'all kids are so blessed to have each of you as mothers. I'm so serious. Thank you, ladies, for joining us.
Everything.
Yes, come on now. Let's have our little
Let's interview them next week and see what they say now.
Oh, that would be fun. We probably should do that. Find a way to interview y'all kids. Get real. Like, okay, now how honest is it? Ooh, that'll be good. Now, sisters, seriously, I appreciate you all, and I want to make sure that we end this episode on a high note. So what's some acknowledgments of good behaviors, I guess, that you've seen from other mothers, or do you want to break us off with a piece of advice, affirmation, encouragement? Give me something positive before we get up off the couch tonight.
I think I'm going to piggyback off of what Devins had said just previously about not just for children but for everybody to be being authentically them, and loving yourself no matter what you might perceive as something that's wrong, because people tend to see your greater aspects, because we are all mirrors to other people. So if people are seeing your greater aspects, you should be able to see them in yourself. So that's my positive note.
I received that.
Yes.
I've seen a quote that says, I'm trying to raise my kids to not need therapy. And I am an extreme advocate for therapy. So part of that, I understand what they're trying to convey. But what I want to say is, I want to raise my children to not feel like they have to wait 30 years to get therapy. So I want to encourage parents to be intentional about having conversations, hard, funny, sad, be open to having these conversations with your kids, because our babies are going through so much. Encourage them to get help, therapy. If you're not in a place mentally where you can have those conversations with them, there are so many therapists that are getting educations and getting loans and grants so that they can be there for your kids and for your family. So utilize the resources that are available to us.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I would like to say, as we close, motherhood is a gift. Everybody don't get the opportunity to do that, and we as women, we do. And so that gives us a role. I mean, that was a role specific by God. That I read a book that said that the pain we go through having a baby, men couldn't do. It'll kill a man. It's just that serious. And God chose us and gave us that power. We were created for that. And so when you think about being gifted to bring life, because we're the life, we bring the life. And then God gives us the role of raising those children, being a good steward of them, making sure that they fulfill their purpose. It's nothing to take lightly. So you have to learn how to be a parent from a logical standpoint. And sometimes, we as humans, it's easy to make emotional decisions or do things emotionally when it comes to raising our children, because trauma can trigger emotional moves. So we have to look at the bigger picture, look at the gift that was given to us, not take it lightly, okay, and be a parent or a mother from a logical perspective, which is the outcome of what that child is supposed to do here on earth. You lead that, you mold that, and keep that perspective in mind.
Amen.
Ooh.
Amen. Look, y'all just showered her. So Shonda said, be authentically you and accept your greatness. Devin said, be proud and seeking the fullness of resources for your children, especially mental wellness resources. By the way, side note, shout out to Devin, because if you need help with resources, you don't know where to go, you can go ahead and reach out to her. Not only is she the founder of Lifted KC, but she also is the founder of Anchored in Hope. And so she is a bundle of resources. Check her out. Both of those have websites, social media pages, so she can help you get started on that journey so that you can bring everything, all of the resources to your children and lift them up. And then Janine reminds us that motherhood is a gift. It's a gift. So be proud of that role, but also take it very seriously. I hope we poured into everyone that tuned in tonight for this episode of Nurturing with Trauma, the Motherhood Edition on the Blacked Out Couch. We hope healing for all. Be sure to tune in, subscribe to our YouTube, subscribe to our Spotify, and look for the Unpacking episodes on Clubhouse. We'll see you again in